All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order, and for everybody's to know that the meeting is being recorded. This is the Town of Southbridge Ad-Hoc Curbside Trash Committee meeting, Thursday, March 2nd, 2023, 6 p.m. in the Veterans Room. Roll call, Councilor Marquetti, I'm here. Councilor Steves?
Here.
Health Inspector Daniel Wasuk, is he going to be here tonight?
Yeah, he's talking with Mark right
Okay.
now.
They're supposed to be.
So. Yeah.
All right, Board of Health member Daniel Grabowski
Yeah.
is here. Kevin Buxton, he may be late. Steve Gregoire.
Yep.
Mark Latoya will be late. Kathy Grenier is here. Thank you. Agenda item number 2, minutes of February 9th. Everybody have a chance to look at the minutes?
Yep.
It was quite long. I tried to get everything that everybody said in.
Agenda sheet too, Mike?
You did a pretty good job, Mike.
Agenda sheet too?
I tried to get as much in the minutes as I could. I thought it was important, and everybody had something to say about it, so I didn't, I wasn't exactly verbatim, but I
It doesn't have to be.
pretty much got
It's
everything.
pretty detailed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gives you a chance to kind of go over what everything was said. And,
Oh, you did good.
yeah. All right. Anybody have any comments or anything? All set? All right. All those in favor of accepting the minutes? Thank you. Presentation by Waste Zero, pay-as-you-throw program. Steve?
Yes, sir.
This is Steve, and I'm sorry, did you get your last name again?
Lasoskis,
Steve Lasaskis.
or just
Wait.
Steve.
Steve is fine.
Nice Irish name.
So Waste Zero is a bag program, and he's gonna.
Company.
explain.
Program.
So, thank you. Good to see everyone was here, I think 2018, last
Right.
time we talked about some of this. And I have copies of a presentation to, if you're interested in going through it, that talk a little bit about the program. And have a couple of spare copies for anyone who would like one. And I'm happy to email it to anybody who would like it as well. Very quickly, Waste Zero, we're a benefit corporation, so we have a shared private mission as well as a public mission to reduce the trash 50% across the United States. Kind of an ambitious goal being that there are 30,000 cities and towns that manage trash across the United States, but that's what we do. And so we focus exclusively on reducing trash, increasing recycling, increasing organic separation. As you can see from the first page of the presentation, we view trash as the last unmetered utility. So when electricity was originally brought as a public service, it was unmetered. When water was originally, when the ancient Romans did water, it was unmetered. Both of them we metered. And in both instances, when we metered it, we saw a 30 to 40% reduction in use. And so that was good for the environment because you weren't producing as much electricity that you didn't need. You weren't treating as much water and wasting water. Quite literally, when you meter something, people make better decisions about it. And there's the old story of J.P. Morgan. They put one of the first electrical substations in America right next to his house, and he just simply left the lights on all night because he said, I'm paying the same one way or the other. It would be stupid of me not to run the electricity. So when we meter it, people pay attention to it, they make better decisions. And so trash today, generally speaking, is still unmetered. You pay for it in your taxes, or you pay for it, there's no charge for it, or you pay a flat fee for it, it's unmetered. People do what the natural thing is to do, which is maximize utilization of the resource. Now, some people will recycle, but it's certainly not optimal, and that's why much more than half of our trash stream is reusable, recyclable, compostable material. So when you implement a pay-as-you-throw program, what that program does is it meters the trash. I have bags here from Brattleboro and Weston, Massachusetts, which you're welcome to beat up and do whatever you like with. They're yours. When you implement a pay-per-bag program, a bag-based pay-as-you-throw program, you reduce trash essentially overnight within the first week of the program, increase recycling, and then you're disposal cost drops, and in some instances, your collection cost drops as well. And I know with your situation, you're looking at potential for a collection contract. When I was in government, I spent about 15 years in government doing mainly turnaround management for distressed cities in New England. But when I was at the town of Natick, we implemented a page throw program, bag-based program, and then went to 4-day week collection, Tuesday to Friday, which allowed us to avoid Monday holiday bumps, which saved us about $110,000 a year in overtime costs associated with Saturday collections. You can do that when you're collecting 30% less trash, 40% less trash. A little harder to do when you're not. So there are potential collection savings there, and of course, when we're recycling more, we're doing better for the environment. We view bag programs on the next page as to be fairer than the other alternatives for folks. Bag program, and I could talk about any of these that you'd like. Bag programs are also easy for residents. You don't have to get a bag and a sticker and affix the two. From the town standpoint, you know the size of the bag, so it's fair for everybody. You don't have somebody putting a sticker on a contractor bag and then somebody not and being treated unfairly. And then it works with automated collection as well. There are several communities that have done automated collection with pay-as-you-throw bags. Relatively hard to do with stickers or tags because you have to be able to see them as the arm is tipping the cart. A number of advantages to using bags for the municipality, convenience for residents, etc. And as a vendor, it's our job, or whoever your vendor is, to produce the bags, to insure them, to store them in warehouses for you, to get them to the stores, hopefully to collect the revenue, to provide the revenue reconciliation to the town, to do everything in a transparent way so you know that you're paying for the appropriate bags, they're being used by residents, you're getting the revenue that you need, etc. More to go, but I'm happy to pause there. If there are any questions, or Mr. Chairman, you just want me to fly through this and then...
Anybody have any questions so far? No?
Okay. So you can see on the next page some projections at a 30% waste reduction. We're looking at a savings of about $134 to $149 a ton. I know you're looking at a tipping fee between $90 and $100 per ton for trash, so that's 90 and 100. So about $134 to $150,000 in reduced disposal cost because people are taking food out and maybe composting it. They are taking recycling out and recycling it. They're taking clothing out and donating it to Goodwill. They're taking books out and donating them. They're doing all the right things that a pay-as-you-throw program incentivizes in a way that essentially no other program does. It incentivizes all forms of waste diversion. That's donations, organics, composting, as well as recycling. The town's recycling rate would move from about 21%, where it was as of the last report to the DEP, to an estimated 36%. So you see a nice move in the recycling rate with about almost another 600 tons of recyclables going into the proverbial blue bin, into the recycling bin. On the next page, next two pages actually modeled two different cost scenarios. I know there was an estimate of 1.8 million for curbside. I modeled it if that includes disposal, and I modeled it if it didn't include disposal. Either way, it's the same, about $100,000, $140,000 worth of savings available. You just have two different cost scenarios of disposals in that 1.8 or disposals out of that 1.8. Critically, how you pay impacts how much you pay. So if you just load it all into a flat fee, our experience in Natick, when we implemented a flat fee, trash went up. Because people said, oh, now I'm paying for it, I'm going to use as much of it as I can. So flat fee is an option. Tax funding is an option. There are a number of options on how to pay for this. But if we give people the tools, you communicate to them, hey, this bag is $1.50, this bag is $2. People take the Snapple bottle and look at it and say, do I want to put it in a $2 bag or do I want to recycle it? And we're incentivizing folks to do what is desired, which is to recycle the recyclables. So there's examples of other communities, Worcester, Waterville, Maine, Sanford, Maine, other communities at the end of the presentation who've done this. But I'm happy to be helpful however I can, including by leaving, if that's your preference.
No, I don't want you to leave.
Okay, not yet anyway, yeah. Yeah, so, Worcester's large city implemented one of the first pay-as-you-throw programs in Massachusetts even before, at the same time as.
Yeah, we will have some questions.
I'll wait if he's gonna keep going.
Yeah, even at the same time, at the same time that recycling was put in place, Waterville, Maine is a smaller community that implemented pay-as-you-throw. We like Sanford, Maine as an interesting example. Sanford, Maine implemented a pay-as-you-throw program, and you're welcome to look this up online, you'll see the history there. A resident of Sanford hit the Maine state lottery and said, I don't like this pay-as-you-throw program, I want it funded by the taxes, so he funded a referendum to get rid of the bag program. And it was one of those referendum that was worded that if you voted yes, it eliminated the program, and no, it kept the program. So it was like, do you not approve of the elimination of?
Yeah.
A lot of people were confused,
Oh, yeah.
but regardless, they voted to get rid of the program. So when they implemented the program, trash dropped 40%. Stayed down. 3 months later, they eliminated the program. By the way, after the vote, he moved to Florida. So I don't know why he did what he did, but that's what he did. 3 years later, the city came back. The town was now a city. Came back and said, listen, we need to save money. Let's implement a pay-as-you-throw program again. And trash dropped 41% the second time they implemented it. So we hear all the time from folks, let's just do education. That's gonna increase recycling. They did education. We've been doing education since 1982. It can move the needle 0.5%, 1%. Pricing matters. That's why you price water. That's why you price electricity. That's why we price all the stuff we price, because pricing matters and makes a difference. And so one can fund solid waste through the tax bill. Well, we will pay more, right? Because you're not reducing trash. You can do it through a trash fee. Again, you're not saving money because people aren't reducing trash. People will pay the least, the town will pay the least, if we communicate to people, here's the cost of a trash bag. People will make the right decision and save money. And so in total, you'll pay less by having a pay-as-you-throw program that helps residents understand the cost of the service.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna open it up to questions. Ms. Clemens?
Well, just a comment, because, your name again?
Steve.
Steve, hi Steve.
Hi there.
You say, oh, if, flat fee, people say, well, I'm paying the fee, I'll use it, has so much trash and so on.
Mhm.
But what we are looking at is using the same containers that we already have. So we already have a limited container use.
Yes.
And you pay the fee based on limited container use. It doesn't mean you get to have all the trash you want, which
Mhm.
people used to say, because we had a landfill, you could do
Mhm.
that,
Mhm.
which was a bad attitude. We went to the trash containers
Mhm.
while we still had the landfill,
Mhm.
which then did reduce things. So I just, that you keep saying that, trash goes up, but I'm countering that to say that
Sure.
we actually have compared to many communities around us, have very good recycling rates, even though it could be way improved by education, no doubt.
Mhm.
So,
So-
the bag situation of being able to get them, find, and make people go buy them
Mhm.
in this community has a number of us very concerned about that,
So, and certainly I would agree with that concern if people weren't already going to stores. People are going to stores to buy, the bags are available in Worcester, 143 locations. Every grocery store, every convenience store, every gas station, there's some old gas stations that no longer sell gas, but they sell cigars and cigarettes, they have bags. So there could be an argument of inconvenience if the bags weren't everywhere, but they will be everywhere. On the carts, the average household in a pay-as-you-throw community throws away 1 bag a week.
Yes.
So in a cart-based scenario, we have data across the just about 800 cities and towns we work with. So I understand people may say that's not gonna happen, but it happens for 2 reasons, and I'll explain that in a second. But if you have a cart, you have 64-gallon cart, 68-gallon cart, whatever it is, we're already providing too much capacity for the average household. And so I agree that I understand where you're coming from, saying we have a limit. From a pay-as-you-throw standpoint, you have an infinite limit because you have way more trash capacity than people will use in an average household. I'm not saying people don't do it now, people don't fill those carts now, but the average household in a bag-based system is 1 per week.
I recycle every everything I can imagine, and I'm 1 to 2 bags per week, and we're only 2 people.
2 bags,
Maybe
fine.
3,
Is
yeah.
that a kitchen
But
bag?
that's
bags,
just for
fine.
2 people.
Yeah, is
But
that
that's
top?
a kitchen
That's
bag.
a completely full
Kitchen bag.
There's
kitchen.
a trash.
Yeah, so
solution.
that's
kitchen
one
bag
Hold on,
is
hold on,
one
one at a
bag.
time,
Yeah.
please.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I just
As
wanna
far as the
clarify.
containers go, we all ride around town, and we see a container with 30 bags overflowing.
True.
I'm
No, that doesn't
exaggerating,
happen.
but there it goes. That's not enforced.
That doesn't happen.
Okay, one at a time,
I
please.
see, I see it every
Oh, I know,
morning.
but I've
see it
said
all
it
the
here,
time.
and it doesn't happen. That's what I was
Oh,
Well,
told.
okay.
again,
Pictures
that's
show
for
there.
lack of compliance, and the compliance is gonna be an issue regardless of what you do. You're gonna have lack of compliance with the bag program, because people are just gonna dump wherever, like we had that problem big time for quite some time. And then we had a lot of illegal trash, and then we had some great compliance for a few years, and then it's not as great anymore. I mean, I'm one of those people who makes a phone call to the Board of Health, it takes pictures and sends them in and said, overflowing, bad stuff, you know.
So the,
I'm just saying, it's all about compliance.
yeah, so the data on compliance is,
I got you, George.
11% of communities in America that have implemented a program like this, and again, there's 30,000 communities in America, about 8,000 have similar programs. 11% of communities reported an increase in illegal dumping. 89 did not. 89% did not. Some of them reported a decrease in illegal dumping. So let's just discard the decrease in illegal dumping communities and just say they were at 0. So 11% of communities, sorry, I lost you there. 11% of communities reported an increase, which all of them reported with light enforcement in the initial months of the program eliminated the problem. Now, what illegal dumping exists today is really the important question. The vast majority of illegal dumping in America and in Massachusetts and in these surveys was commercial waste, not residential waste. So it's not me taking my trash with a pay-as-you-throw program or not, out of my house, driving it around and hucking it down a hill. It's a contractor generally doing land clearance or move-out trash. So it's file cabinets, beds, you know, stuff like that. So now, I don't know the situation here from an illegal dumping standpoint as to what it is now. I'd be surprised if it were regular municipal solid waste rather than commercial waste. And what the experience of other cities and towns in Massachusetts and nationally shows is it's not MSW, because most residents know the rules and don't want to get in trouble. It may be commercial waste, which you're not collecting today anyway, and is not subject to a bag program anyway. So it's usually a continuation of the illegal dumping that's always been there. But every community is different, and I'm not supposing I understand your situation. But that's how it typically works out.
Are you all set for this
I'm
kind
good
of?
for now, yep.
All right, George?
Got a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
The bags that, size-wise, that I think were confusing maybe,
Yes.
is that the household trash bags that people buy now is 13 gallons?
Mhm.
And these are bigger, I would assume?
Yeah.
You can open it.
So the municipality, the town gets to choose what size bag. Typically, it's at least 2 bag sizes. There's a 13 to 15 gallon, and then there's a 30 to 33 gallon. So the 30 to 33 gallon usually fits 3 13-gallon bags, because people give it the good old elbow. So I think those are both small bags.
Oh, they both are kitchen bags.
So I've got some large bags I can get for you, but this is a small bag. And imagine 2 of those wide is the large bag, and that's what people use
This
one
is
of
the
per.
small.
Now somebody,
That's the kitchen
Oh,
bag.
that's your average bag, yeah.
That's no, that's a kitchen bag. Your average one is 3 times the size.
What do you have, a
30.
55
The
gallon
33 gallon, the
kitchen?
big, the 33 gallon.
Okay, hold on, George has the floor, let George
The
finish.
bags
no,
we
let
buy.
her finish with the bag size, and I'll go with the question.
Can you wanna try, look, feel it?
No, I understand the size bags is determined by probably what you guys are gonna decide. When Worcester implemented the plan, there was a lot of discontent, and it was because of education. Now, they've been doing this for a long time now, and at least some of the political figures coming out of Worcester, they don't care for it,
Mhm.
but it works.
Mhm.
And I don't know if they can, if this bag's gonna pay for it all, if they decide to go this route, or if it's supplemented by either tax dollars or not. But I find that the biggest thing is the education aspect of it, and then determining the enforcement of it is how much the town wants to spend to enforce it.
Mhm.
Because if you go down the streets now, it's very little enforcement is done now, pretty much every single street you go down, there's containers that are constantly overflowing, that they're double, triple what's supposed to be in there. The lids are open, and if they were to take that bag and put it on the curb and only pick up what they were supposed to do, this town would be in trouble. Also, the same situation happens with the containers with the recycling. If you look at the recycling containers, they're overflowing because either the residents are not breaking them down the way they should to make them fit and get more. But a big part of the thing, and I think you guys will all understand that and know that, is the education aspect. And it's going to be, no matter what system we go through, education is gonna play an important part of it. We're not gonna like what they come up with, because we're so used to today just putting it there and taking it. It's amazing to see the recycling truck the trash truck pick up the recyclings and throw it in the same bucket. Because from here, it goes to a sorting facility, and they sort it out.
Right.
So, again, people think we're recycling very well in our community, but it's going in some instances, going into the same bucket as the trash.
Okay.
I believe it all depends on how busy they are, but you've got a difficult challenge, and I like the bag pay as you throw, but
Yeah.
the important thing is educating the people, no matter which the committee decides to go with.
Well, I think certainly the city of Malden, for instance, they were facing an issue with the financing the fire department. And so what they said is, we're gonna implement a program in 7 weeks. Very successful program, huge amount of waste reduction, but it didn't go all that well. Residents were pretty upset. Our recommendation, and the committee's doing a public process now, is you need a public process. You need to engage people and you need to educate folks on whatever the program is that's coming, whether it's a fee, whether it's in the taxes, whether it's whatever. We need to have an engagement process, because this is gonna be change for everybody. And so when we look at programs like, so Fall River, Massachusetts had a program for a time. Fall River's a tough community, struggling community financially. They had carts, they implemented the program, very, very successful waste reduction. City council asked the mayor to do it, mayor said no. City council asked the mayor to do it again, mayor said no. City council asked a third time, the mayor said, okay, I'll do it. City council then said, oh, don't do it. Right? And so now they made it his program. And so the city councilors campaigned and said to residents, don't participate in the program. Don't use the purple bags. This is the mayor jamming it down your throat. Even though they brought the program forward, they proposed it, he said no. So they campaigned actively against it. First week of the program, 93% participation.
Do you
Because
find,
of outreach, education, and people following.
But we don't have a mayor
steps.
here either, so.
but do you find that the communities that are going this route, I mean, we're all different kinds, but you look at, you have to look at the demographics,
Yes.
because you take a community like Southbridge, where we've got a lot of poor people, we have a lot of poor people. And
That's what this community is.
it is, and
No
so,
business, poor people.
comparing us to maybe portions of Worcester, Fall River,
Yeah.
Springfield, those are our demographics.
Yes.
So the education portion of this thing is gonna be very important. We're gonna struggle for maybe the first year to get whatever you guys decide to implement. But education is key.
I'll tell you, in Fall River, we saw within, like, 93% participation in week 1, and then getting better and better each week, just from the folks on the truck saying, oh, not a purple bag. And so you don't have to find people. What people need to know is you noticed, right? So then it was a private hauler who was doing it, they just had a clipboard. Waste Management uses an airmail system where they press a button and it talks to dispatch. 123 Main Street bag. And you send them a letter or you tag it for them. You don't even have to leave it. But if you let people know you noticed, 81% of the time they don't violate again, because they know you're paying attention.
And
And
what
so-
if they do violate again?
Then,
Nothing.
no. So,
It's like all the other
Then the
bylaws.
DPW picks
You
it
don't
up.
pick it up.
Huh?
right,
Then the
Hold on,
DPW
hold
goes
on.
picks it up.
so what we recommend is you have to have a process, right? When I was in Springfield, we had a 4-step process, which is notice, Yellow notice, red notice, fine. And that's where we got to 81% compliance off the first notice. And it's Springfield,
That's
right?
called
So it's-
enforcement.
I'm sorry?
That's called enforcement.
Yes, and so that can be done at a truck level, or that can be done, as one vendor, give us the list every week of the places that didn't participate appropriately. We'll send the letters for you. We'll do, and we'll track to see if it's violation 2, violation 3, we can't fine for the town, but that's something that we'd be happy to do. And one of the reasons we're happy to do it is because after the first letter, people tend not to do it again, so it's kind of a lonely job. But you haven't experienced it yet. We've experienced it hundreds of times. Massachusetts has experienced it 155 times. This is one for you. So,
People will have to buy these bags, correct?
yes, ma'am.
All right, I'm gonna,
People
hold
in
on.
Southbridge just don't have money, I mean, they don't even have money to buy food.
They got
As
money-
we all know.
They got money to pay taxes.
Hold on,
One last question.
go ahead, George.
The system of going by the tax rate, paying for this, or the enterprise fee, do you find that more people complain and have less enforcement when you're back, if you're paying it by the taxpayers, a limited amount of people are paying for it in town, and getting to a single family taxpayer is gonna probably be paying the same as a multiple family taxpayer as it does now in the tax rate. How do you address something like that?
So, the way we look at trash is, so, where I live, we are one of a series of houses that all are identical, sort of built by a developer at the same time, and he had one set of plans and he liked them, apparently, we all had the same house. So, my wife and I, we put out, and our two kids, we put out one small bag, one of these bags a week, a 13-gallon bag a week. My next door neighbor must import trash. It's him and his wife, it's 6 bags of trash a week. We pay the exact same for the service, because we pay the exact same taxes, because we get the exact same house right next to each other, right? And so, if I sit and think about it for a minute, I'm a little bit unhappy about that, right? Because he's using 12 times as much trash as I am. I have to pay that for him. If I live by myself as an empty nester, I have to pay for somebody who's choosing to, he's got a toilet every week. I mean, clearly he owns multifamily property somewhere, right, that he has to pay for trash and he's bringing it in. But I have to pay for that. It's not fair to me. And it's
It
not,
is not fair.
and it's
It
not
is
fair
not fair.
to everybody else who's in a similar situation, who's a good recycler, or who's living alone and not generating trash, or has a backyard and compost. It's not fair.
Right.
So fairness is a big deal here, in our minds. If we just load it into the tax base and everybody's paying the same, or load it into a flat fee only and everybody's paying the same, that's not fair to the people who are doing what we're asking them to do. We're asking them to make a little bit of effort and recycle. And then they're getting penalized for that essentially, right? I think a good model is fee plus bags. Why? Because the truck's gonna come to everybody's house one way or the other, right? And everybody should share in that cost, right? Whether I'm putting out 1 bag or 12 bags, the truck still has to come. I'll share in that cost equally because it's the same level of service. But the generation of the trash should be by how much you generate. Because then that's what's causing 12 of these versus 1 of these is what's causing the taxpayers to pay more. So for the fairness piece, we see a hybrid system working really well. Everybody pays for the truck equally, because we all share in it equally, but then you pay for the trash that you generate.
All right, I'm gonna
If
go
you
around
do
this
have-
table first.
Abby,
I'm gonna go around the table first. Go ahead, Mark, do you have a question?
I just seen tonight that we've been compared to cities. We don't get any of the benefits that cities get, but we've been compared to them time and time again. I mean, give me a model of our diverse community with several multifamilies, and, you know, let's see if the proof's in the pudding there. I mean, we don't get none of the benefits of a city. We are a city, but we are not declared a city. So we have, it makes everybody poor, I guess, like George said. Our taxes, you compared 2 identical homes, you compared 6 bags to your 1 bag. Now, take that comparison and take your single-family home and compare it to a six-family that for years has paid a lower tax rate than you because it's assessed lower. A six-family in town is assessed lower than a 1,100 square foot ranch in this town. So the problem goes very, very deep here, beyond the bag. I like the hybrid idea. The problem I don't like about the hybrid idea, you put that on the table coming up, the fire department's coming, the tax levy's gonna be to the max. Then what do? What does the town do? Then the town says, okay, you have a hybrid system, we can't do it in taxes, it's going to the bag. Now all these people are gonna pay $5 a bag, and it's gonna be gold. Who makes the bag? The state? Who makes the bag?
We, as one company, make the bags, other companies make the bags too.
They do. And then the state buys them from you as a vendor?
No, he's talking to you directly. We have a state contract, which he's one of the vendors on
He
the
is a
state
vendor
contract.
through the state contract.
Yes.
You all set?
Yeah, I just,
Anybody else?
Do you want to go first?
Daniel?
I had a question, I'm all set, it was answered already.
Okay. Steve?
I had a question for both of you, could probably answer it because of your vast knowledge on this. What is the average, what's the right word for it, temperature that people are willing to pay for a bag? Because I know you've said
I
sometimes.
think that goes. I always say a cup of coffee is like it should not be too much more than a cup of coffee. So,
Yeah.
and it goes on your demographics. It goes
Is it-
with your things. I could say though, unbelievable. The town of Barry, when the Barry landfill closed, it was unbelievable. They went to a bag and we said, this is not the price. They wanted to make it as cheap as possible. And so they just actually put the cost of the bag. I even think they subsidized it. I think it was 25 cents and 40 cents for the bags. It still worked.
Mhm.
They still had the reduction. And then when the landfill closed and they had no money coming in, then they started going up on the
So-
price. But there's a barrier. And we talked about this before. It's the fixed cost, the guy going down the road. That transportation cost needs to be covered by a fixed revenue,
So
so a flat fee
I
or.
was just doing some quick math.
You do not want to get over, especially here, $3. I
Okay,
think
so I
would
know
be.
if we're talking Dunkins or Starbucks.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
$3. $3 would be too much
I think
for Southbridge.
Yeah.
I do have a few communities that hit 5, and that is because they are drop-offs, and they are operated by a private company, and then they say, you can come here if you pay the $5. But everybody else is around the $2.50.
Okay.
Is pretty much, I think you would say to
Yeah,
it.
that's the highest we see, certainly.
but what happens if it can't come out of the taxes?
Steve,
You have
take
the flat
floor,
fee.
please.
I mean, that's the thing, you make a flat
Right.
fee.
So
Steve,
I've been
Steve, you
pretty-
still have the floor.
Pretty consistent that I was more in favor of a flat fee system. But I'm trying to remain open-minded to some kind of hybrid model, because I think it does give a benefit to the people that produce less, just like you just said, and you've said multiple times. And I don't produce a lot of trash, so I would benefit from this. If I were to be in favor of a hybrid model, it'd probably still be a flat fee-based system. I am 130% against putting this anywhere near a tax base, for the exact reason Mark spoke about. So if you were looking, we'd be looking to, I mean, we can word this a million different ways. If you wanna do your fixed fee as part of your flat fee, which would be good, cause you know you can always cover your flat fee. You're looking at 75% of your cost-ish being in your flat fee, and you're covering your last 25% with bag sales. So, I mean, by quick math says right in that $2 to $250 range would work in that model if we were looking for that $2 million number, which is, I know you use 1.8, but we've been using 2 million just so it's a nice round number to work with.
And you have the
That's-
small bags as well, so you
But
can always,
it's
reduce
$250
that.
for the big bag?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the big bags, let's say,
Ish. I
yes,
know it's ish.
let's say for argument's sake, the large bag is $2.
30 gallon?
I'm sorry?
Is it a 30
The
gallon?
30.
30, yeah.
33
You get to
gallon,
choose.
right.
There's some communities that have a 47, yeah.
Okay.
But we don't recommend it because
Alright.
if you're a resident and you're living on a 3rd floor, you gotta get a 40-gallon bag full
Okay.
of stuff down the stairs.
So how much is the roll?
So, well, it's 5 or 10 bags per roll. Again, you get to decide. So if it's $2 a bag, it's $10 per roll. Some communities allow people to sell them one at a time versus on a roll. That's up to you. We can talk about that in a second, but allow me to answer
Yeah,
your
sure.
question. So if it's $2, the small bag, usually about half the size, we recommend, for the town, it makes sense for it to be slightly more than half the price. Because a small bag is not, a bag that's half the size is not half as expensive.
Right.
right? Because it still spends the same amount of time on the machine. You know, it uses more plastic, more than half the plastic of a large bag. So to cover the fact that this is slightly more expensive than half of the big bag is to include that in the price. So if it's $2 for a large, it's maybe $1.05 or $1.25 for a small. And then that covers the additional cost of the smaller bag compared to half.
And then generally with whatever hauler you go with, what does the hauler inevitably do when they find non-participating bags? Does it just go right back on the front lawn?
Leave it there. It's in that container, so
They leave it behind.
So typically, if in an automated system, they're gonna notice it after after you latch on and you dump, the camera that's looking in the back for propane tank and kids, right, is catching it, so they're not gonna pull that out. What we recommend is getting the address of that, so I'm at 123 Main Street or whatever it is, or whatever, they will have a system of some variety. It could be a clipboard, right? Clipboard and write it down.
But no, I'm talking about the actual material though. They just put it back in the bin and it stays there?
No,
No,
they're
if
not
it's
gonna pull it out.
automated, so I'd say if it's not automated, most of my programs are not automated.
Right.
So you guys do have an automated system, so in that case,
You still
it
take it.
is flipped.
still
The only
take
thing
it.
is if you have a bright enough bag that it can be seen through the mirror, the camera very easily.
How do you handle multifamilies?
So,
Each
Sure,
family is
I'm
responsible
also-
for its own bag?
okay. So,
Keep it
just
around the
to
table.
finish that
Oh,
thought, so we tested in New Hampshire, blue-green bags versus green-blue bags, and the camera can tell the difference. So we recommend a bright color, but even if you had bags that were very close in color to black or white, the camera can still tell, the operator looking at the camera can see the difference. The cameras are that good. Multifamilies.
Now, sir, I'm gonna let, sir, what? Your name, please?
James Corbin, 112 Clemens Hill Road.
Okay, go ahead, you can
I
ask.
was just wondering how you handle multifamilies.
So, in short, depends. And let me give you the spectrum here. So, there's a court case in Massachusetts that says municipality only has to collect up to 4 family, right? So, if you collect 1 to 4, you have to collect. 5 and above is discretionary. Now, there are communities like Worcester that collect up to 8. There are communities like Portland, Maine that collect up to 20. In Portland, Maine, they have a blue bag-based program that they use for up to 20 units. And for them, it has worked. So what we recommend is, first we gotta figure out what all units you're collecting from. And then if it's up to the 8 units, there are communities not too far from here, cities and towns that collect up to 8 units and it's not an issue. From an enforcement standpoint, we recommend that for multifamilies, that's a business typically, right?
That's the way I look at it.
And
That's why I
so-
brought it up.
The property owner is responsible for A, providing the bags, or B, making sure their tenants use the bags.
Yes,
So if there's enforcement, it's not against a tenant who,
probably don't care. Hate to say it.
and how do you find them,
Mhm.
right? Does the town even know who they are? They're not gonna get a building permit, any of that stuff. So that the multis enforcement be done to the property owner, who's responsible for the trash on the property anyway.
Yep.
And doing the enforcement that way. And if they're an absentee landlord, it forces them to engage a little bit more in their property, that's probably a good thing, right? So it's cleaner, easier, simpler for everybody.
Boils down to enforcement,
Having somebody
especially
to-
with multifamilies.
Yes.
Before I go to you, does anybody else have? No? Okay, Mark?
So that is part of the problem in our town,
Oh,
is
yes.
that we don't consider a multifamily a commercial property until after 4. And then there was a rule that said 4 and up had to have their own, they had to pay for their own disposal.
Sure.
We didn't follow that rule either. We let that go. So now you're gonna, in the Board of Health, the poor guy, when we talk about enforcement here, we talk about, I think, 2 people. And a guy that drives around the white truck that parks mostly, I don't know, in the woods. I don't know what goes on. But we'll talk about that later, I guess, as another part of employment. But how do you have 2 people do this entire town unless the landlord actually pays for the bag and is responsible? Because otherwise it's gonna sit there until the DPW goes and picks it up, and then we're paying again. Then we're paying the DPW to go get it. which is what happens now. This is it's gonna go through the same process as now.
So
The
what-
DPW, if somebody doesn't do it, the DPW goes and does it. The Board of Health tries chasing down the landlord that lives in Newton or Wellesley that has 33 homes here. He tries chasing him down. It doesn't work. You can't, the tenant says it ain't my house. That's what we got.
So here's what I'd suggest. So first off, you're gonna create rules for the program. So if you wanna set it at 4, you're creating the rules. I'm not creating the rules.
Mhm.
So if it's not enforced today, it was at 4, but there's some 6s in there and some 8s in there, you're creating the rules.
Right.
Create the rules that say it's 4. And it's a new world, folks. You 6 and you were sneaking in before, too bad. The new rules are 4 and it's 4 and that's it, right? And so the town is gonna create a program which has rules. You don't have to enforce anything from before, you just have to enforce what's going forward. So give your hauler the list of addresses that are 1 to 4 family, and nothing else are they allowed to collect. And if they start collecting them, there's a contract provision that you fine the hauler for taking the 20 families' trash when they're not supposed to.
Right.
Now, from the enforcement side, what I would suggest is, so we've worked with maybe one community that had to hire anybody to do enforcement whatsoever, right? So the program, when people understand the rules, when, as the gentleman mentioned earlier, education about the program you're going to implement, let's say you were to do a bag-based program, that's part of the education and outreach. The program kind of maintains itself. We don't have towns that have people whose job it is to run around and force people to participate in the program. When I was in town management, we had, in 3 years, 1 person not use the bag. And it was actually somebody who threw the bag on their lawn, and what we found is, guess what? People who do silly things do. They leave personal identifying information in their trash bag. We had the police drive over, drop it on his front lawn, and said, you do it again, you're in trouble. So, I'm not saying that's gonna be your experience.
That would be a first here.
We have a plethora of silly people.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Ms. Clemens, are you also?
So I just wanted to share on that, okay?
Okay, go ahead, I'll
So
let you,
it's
then I'm
just,
gonna go to Ms.
sorry,
Clemens.
that, so we were talking about also with Milford before, is that they gave the letter to, before just saying no, because we have a lot of multifamilies here, they have been in, the cost would be dramatic, and it would be, I think, illegal dumping might be a problem if we say no to these families right away. But Milford gave a letter from the Board of Health to each of the landlords and saying, note that we do not need to be servicing your establishment, your business. And if you do not follow our program and are clean about it and do it properly, we will take you off the list.
Have you ever called Casella?
I've
can
talked to
tell
them
you
separately.
that automated thing. Please hold, your call is very important to us. And if you want the song, I can give it to you, because it's an hour long.
But you're not talking about Casella.
No,
No,
I'm just saying
I'm
that's
saying-
the town to
All right,
the landlord.
In order to reach out to a vendor, what is it gonna be like?
Well, you're supposed to, in your contract, the contract language is you are the customer of the contract.
Right.
So the vendor that you choose has to provide you with a manager who is operating the drivers of your thing. And if they have any problems, if they're having a fire, somebody puts a propane tank in there and there's a fire, you need to know about it right away. And you were doing communication with them anyway when you were doing IQ things. So there was communication, you have had communication with the vendor, the manager and the drivers already. So it's just, the question I think I have for you is, have you done that enforcement?
Yes.
And who and what would be that added cost? Like if they wanted to just do it, try it for 6 months,
Yeah.
just to see how that, because the Board of Health office is very strapped with time and.
So, I believe, so we did some enforcement around Fall River, Fall River's program, where we put people on the streets and followed every single truck. And checked the carts before they were dumped, did all that sort of stuff, kept logs. It was really kind of futile after like the 4th week, because everybody's in they had purple bags, everybody's in a purple bag. That's something we've done in several communities, we're happy to do it. Particularly as we recommend you do it on a week-to-week basis, just because if we're doing it for 6 months, and after month 1, we're kind of just driving around town, why should you pay us for any of that stuff. So we recommend you do it on a week-to-week basis. But I can get some, sort of how that pricing was. I think a lot of it was, frankly, we knew we weren't gonna be doing a whole lot, so we threw a whole lot of the cost in. But I'll find out what it is and I can.
And then the other thing is, if the manager, the hauler manager, see if they have that contract, would give you the list, like give an email to the Board of Health and to Waste Zero to say, okay, these are our problem childs.
Yes.
Can you do that letter?
Yes.
And just, it's not you going out thing, but you just have that communication letter.
Yes.
And how much would that be for the town? Just
That's
so
gonna be
they're-
zero.
Huh?
That's gonna be zero. So if we get a list from Casella, Waste Management, whomever, you just have that list sent to us every day. We've got a list of all properties, we can see this house's second violation, so we send them second violation note. The only thing we can't do is, we can't collect that revenue for you, because then there's a court case on that a private vendor can't do both. We can bill it, we can send the violation notice, but we can't collect the revenue, the treasurer collector has to do that. But we can do all of it other than collecting that, and that's at no cost.
So I'm gonna go to Ms. Clemens next, and then I'll go to you.
So many things came up. When we're discussing fees, taxes, completely agree with what's going on with the tax levies and such. But what we had talked about was, you hit on the point, the multifamilies and a lesser value that a lot of them, not all of them, granted some multifamilies are in great shape, but the average multifamily is much less than the average single family home. We are 50% multifamily housing in this community. Some of the numbers and the projections were done based on unit pricing. One of the things that's been discussed at this meeting is not by not a tax over everybody that, based on the value of your home. So you worked really hard all your life, you kept up your house really nice, and now you're gonna pay a lot more than some three-family business person, as you say, maybe who's not even local. However, we looked at a fee program that is, you're assessed based on units.
Yes.
You got a three-family, you got a four-family, you got whatever, that's your flat fee program.
You pay 3 or 4 times as much as a single.
Exactly.
Yep, makes perfect sense.
Exactly. The idea of the landlords being responsible for the bags, I think is absolutely ridiculous. I'm just gonna say it like that. I don't even know if that's not even how I feel. I feel worse than that. In this community, we talked about, years ago, when I was heavily involved in a lot of things, one of the problems we had was compliance. Once we got our containers, compliance was an issue, and landlords were getting fined. We had bylaws, we have fining systems that fine people who are supposed to fine people who do not comply. And the landlords, some of them were getting slammed in the first month because every week their people were violating the rules. Now they were coming in, I had landlords as a counselor, coming and complaining, we had $900 fines. I mean, what am I supposed to do? My tenant puts the wrong stuff, it's not my, I can't be there every Thursday morning or Wednesday morning or whatever it is. So, talk to the Board of Health back then, the other agent. We had understandings in place, and they dealt with the landlords, sent letters. If you marked your containers, and we could prove, we got picture, we could prove that it was unit 1, unit 2, whoever unit, then we would go after them and enforce it with them and teach them and do this type of thing. And that worked for a long time, and that's why you'll see, as I said it multiple times here, when you go down, a lot of times you will see containers, most of them now, that are marked ABC, 1, 2, 3, unit 3, whatever. It's amazing that the landlords knew they didn't want to get fined, and it also made the tenants responsible, because they should be responsible for their trash. It's pretty sad that we all just say the deadbeat landlord who's doing the trash when it's the non-compliant citizens that live in this community. So, enforcement has to be around them, and they have to be responsible for buying their bags, and not just getting them for free, because we should all know by now that when people get things for free, there's no value, there's no commitment, there's no buy-in, so they still make the most trash. One of the things I heard at one of these meetings is how wonderful it is to go with a bag program, and then we can work, the low income and this and that, and we can give free bags, and you get 50 free bags and 100, whatever. I don't wanna pay for their trash. That's why we're talking about this situation as to whether it should be taxes or whether it should be flat fees or what it should be. There's opt-out, we know the state has opt-out issues, so if you have a fee program, you can opt out. We've talked about providing proof of haulers. There's a lot of them. So as far as the bag program, unless you can say that the units are gonna pay for them and all, or how are you gonna figure that out? I think that's ludicrous to say that the landlord has to be responsible for. You can give those bags and guess what'll happen? I can guarantee those bags will be traded for other things.
So, and allow me to clarify, so, because
And we all know what that
you
means.
characterized your opinion as to the comment as ludicrous, allow me to clarify what I was saying. I'm not saying landlords should provide free bags to their tenants, at all. I'm saying it's not the municipality's problem as to how the landlord manages their business. And so, if that the landlord is legally, under public health law, state law, responsible for the waste generated on their property and how that's managed. And so, whether the landlord wants to provide those bags for free to tenants, in Worcester as one example, in most of the communities that I work in, the tenant is required to pay for the bags. That's the way I believe it should be. But as the landlord, if my tenant doesn't buy it, it's still my property that I have to make sure that the bags are appropriate. And so in some instances, I may provide those bags to my tenants because I don't want to have to deal with the problem. What I'm saying is it shouldn't be the municipality's problem, because the municipality has a program and the landlord is the intermediary here, right, is the business here. The tenants should be buying the bags. That's the only way they get the pricing incentive. If we provide them free bags, they generate, as you said, they generate an enormous amount of trash. That's not what we want to do. So I'm not suggesting the town's policy should be that the landlords provide bags for free at all. It's not what I'm all suggesting. What I'm saying is some landlords are gonna say, I'm just gonna do it because I don't wanna have to deal with whether my tenants are doing the right thing or not. But I think it makes perfect sense for the tenants to be responsible for buying the bags, because that's the only way they get the right signal.
But we're still talking about the bags being in the containers and having an automatic system. So the containers are still marked, they're still, so,
Yeah.
but your proposal of, that the landlord should be the ones ultimately responsible for the bags, I think you're wrong. I think you said, yes, the health, and maybe the state says, you're a business, you've got to provide. But the reality is, it is the community's problem. That's why we're dealing with the trash right now. It is ultimately the community's problem. So you have to come up with a system that's gonna work within your community.
Agreed.
So, do you have something on that? Yeah,
Well, you're
one
both
other
saying
thing.
the same thing. He's talking about legal culpability,
Mhm.
ultimate legal culpability if there's an infraction. And you're saying none of this is gonna solve it, and you're both right. Just
But-
because the landlord is legally culpable, it doesn't solve the tenant's responsibilities. It doesn't obviate those, it doesn't do any of that. It's gotta be finely tuned.
Right.
It's gotta
So
be finely tuned.
The ultimate fine, if the tenants in 3B are the ones ultimately doing the illegal disposing, then they should be getting fined. They should be getting acknowledged as the culprit for what's going on. Regardless, we still need to be mindful of that. We need to be mindful of making sure that the citizens are the ones taking their own responsibility. So I'm saying because our Board of Health is, people are here, how are, you've gotta manage that, in that
Hold on,
respect.
hold on.
So I say the biggest concern, I think, that's been discussed multiple times is as I said, the tax implication. The fact that, you can't, assessing others for other people's trash is just not the way to go in this community. Everybody has to be responsible for their trash in some
All right.
way, shape, or form.
Thank you.
To the point of not being in touch with Casella, I've driven down Route, the 290 and watched trash flying out of the trash truck before, and actually made the phone call and got somebody to pick up. And I said, look, I don't know, it's truck number or whatever, but you got trash flying out of the back of it. And they picked up and answered. So I'm not so sure which line we're calling.
I do it on a regular basis.
All right,
Yeah,
I'm gonna,
and I'll think of something else to say, but
Okay.
yeah.
I'm gonna go with this lady next. She's been very patient. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I agree with Denise, on most of her speaking there. As far as the taxes go, she had mentioned the taxes go up because of this whole trash, and depending on what your, where your residents live, whether you have a business of 3-family, 4-family, whatever it may be, going back to just a single residence, if I'm throwing away just one bag versus another person that's throwing away 4 bags, and our house is valued at the same, that's fine. But if my house is valued at more because it's a nicer house, and that person is valued at a lower price, that's not really fair either. I'm gonna pay for one bag, they're gonna pay for one bag, but their tax is gonna be lower than mine. I don't really think that's fair.
Okay, thank you. Hold on, George, I'm gonna go with Gus next.
Two things. One is, we were talking about the whole issue of mostly focusing on bags. And if we're having a toter system, where they're putting these special labeled bags in the toters, but they're being dumped automatically, how do you know that they're not using, illegal bags in the toters, because you can't see the toters anyway?
Sure. So the truck has an arm that comes out
Yeah.
and it dumps it
Right.
into a hopper.
Right.
The hopper is monitored by a camera, which the driver's required to be monitoring. They're looking at the camera as it's dumping to make sure you're not getting propane tanks, any of that stuff that once you compact, it's gonna be a real problem for the truck.
Right, oh, sure.
So they're monitoring it, and they can see whether it's, let's go yellow, because there's a yellow bag here, whether it's the town's yellow bag.
Mhm.
If it's not the town's yellow bag, they can very easily see that, and then we can go through the enforcement process, whatever you want. Fine people right away, just notify people.
So what do? Would they actually literally stop, go in there, grab the
No,
violating
No, the
bag?
bag
and leave
stays,
it on
the bag
lawn?
stays in the hopper, they're not allowed to go in the hopper. So that bag is gone. From a public health standpoint, we argue that's probably the better solution. There are some communities that they don't have automated collection, but they leave it on the curb.
Mhm.
That's perfect in January, pretty bad in August,
Sure.
right? So there are most communities that we work with, I don't know if it's most, but a lot of the communities we work with say, we're gonna collect it, but we're gonna put the resident through the enforcement process.
Mhm.
So let's say somebody has a black bag instead of a yellow bag.
Right.
That address gets written down, let's say I'll make it simple, Waste Zero's involved in the process. Your hauler sends us the list, number 1 Elm Street had a bad bag, now they're on the list. 3 strikes and you get a fine, so now they got 1. Okay, we get another call, 1 Main Street now it's 2 bags. Now we're sending them letters each time,
Mhm.
because what tells people not to do it again is the fact that government noticed,
Right.
right? And so we send a letter on behalf of the town that says, whatever you want it to say, hey, you made a mistake, please don't do it again, or you're a scoundrel, cut it out, however you want that worded, right?
Okay.
That tells people you noticed, and what people know is when they do something wrong in government notices, they get a fee, they get a fine, or they go to jail, or you take their property for non-payment of taxes, right? They know not to typically people don't mess around.
Right.
So when you tell them you noticed, that's all you need to do,
Okay.
usually they stop.
And the other question I was curious about, back a while ago, you were mentioning the tonnage reductions and the increase in recycling.
Yes, sir.
Just from what you have seen, generally speaking, do you still find that they are disposing of recyclables anyway?
Yes.
Yeah. How do we fix that?
So, that's a much harder question.
Yeah, sure.
And so, when I look at Stonington, Connecticut as an example, so one of the things we did in Stonington is we took their trash for, I think, 3 or 4 days, dumped it on the ground in a licensed permitted area, just so you don't call it was with DEEP's approval, and we opened every bag of trash and went through every single bag of trash. And categorized all of them. We did a full waste audit that you do at an incinerator, waste energy facility, for the town.
Right.
And identified the common recyclables that are in there, and then start building some education programs around that.
Okay.
So our preference is to go with data.
Mhm.
It's not a job to do with new clothes on,
No, obviously.
but we think it's important work for the towns that are willing to do it. Let's identify what's actually in there. You could take a sample of bags, or like the town, all bags, open it up and see, and then we could say, okay, geez, there's a ton of cardboard in here.
Mhm.
Okay, why is there a ton of cardboard in here? And develop an education program around cardboard. We find education works better when people are incentivized
Right.
to reduce their trash, much less so when they're not. So I wanna find out what's in the trash that's still recyclable for you,
Mhm.
so we can start targeting.
So when you do that, then assuming, let's say you've got one of these bag programs and they've already reduced 30%, let's say. What kind of effect do you see doing the secondary education and, you know, and, the secondary audit education program? How does that work?
So
What
we've
kind
not
of
done a
response
ton of them,
Yeah.
just because most communities are pretty satisfied with the average of 44% waste reduction.
Mhm.
Most communities are pretty satisfied with that. In the communities we've done it, we have seen a couple percent movement on cardboards or
Mhm.
plastic bottles or whatever the issue was, but it's not drastic.
Okay.
But it's more than what we see if we just simply go door to door and knock on, without a pricing incentive, knock on people's door and say, hey, for the 48th time, would you please recycle?
Right.
That doesn't do anything.
No, it doesn't. Okay, thanks.
You're all set? George, do you have something new that you want to ask? All right, go ahead.
I think you mentioned something that if a community does pick up 1 to 4 families, the community is required to pick.
Mhm.
Anything after the 4 is considered something else. On a enterprise fund
Okay, I'm sorry.
base, on an enterprise fund, I think there was some discussion about each unit pricing.
Mhm.
You know, a single family would be 1 unit,
Mhm.
up to 4 units would be 4 units. And I would assume they would be billed as individual units or as a 4-unit entity. Is that some of the discussion that you guys have had?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So ultimately, is that a bag unit also, to put bags in that?
Either way.
Could be either way.
All right, so if you don't go to bag and you're into it per unit, you're in the same situation that you're having now. Is that a 4 that's gonna have a humongous amount of trash, and as that single family, but single family is gonna still be based on a single family, amount
The
of
flat
trash.
fee, yeah.
Mhm.
So without going with the bag, you're ultimately, you're not cutting your tonnage down.
Mhm.
And ultimately with the enterprise fund, isn't the town, if you violate that and you don't pay that unit, doesn't the town attach that as a tax lien on the individual home as you would sewer and water?
They would.
So it's still ultimately a tax-based fee, but it's called the enterprise fund.
The enterprise fund is just where you hold the money.
Yeah.
It's whether we want it in the general fund where it can go anywhere, or we want it in an enterprise fund where it can only be used for trash.
Right,
Which
I
is a lot more
understand.
accountability.
Right,
Yes.
I
When
understand
you're
that.
talking about taxes versus flat fees, taxes is based on the value of your house. So if you have a nice lawn, a nice siding, you're gonna pay more for trash than a dumpster fire in a
Or
house.
tax fee based.
All right,
If you go
we're
with
talking
flat
about bags, let's stick to bags. You all set?
All done.
All right,
Dumpster fire.
Once-
It's just about his tax thing.
okay.
Jesus, man, I forget, oh, you said a lien, I'm sorry, I'm getting old. Yes, they can lien it, but the water and sewer went to a shut-off program a number of years back, if anybody recalls, when Chris
Yeah.
started. So there now is a process, although it still takes about a year, there is at least a process for your utility situation, in our case, it's only water and sewer, that if somebody doesn't pay, rather than let them go years in arrears and just attach it to a lien that's never gonna get collected because they're gonna live in their house till they die, they actually would shut off water. And that would, you know, people say, oh, that's horrible, but guess what? They shut off your electric, shut off your cable, shut off everything if you don't pay. So the town finally did that, collected a lot of money, it wasn't just on paper, now it was in our bank. So with the trash, I imagine you do the same thing, but since it's illegal to have trash dumping, those people would then have to have their private hauler in some way, shape, or form, and would have to enforce that.
All
So,
right,
so there's multiple layers, but at least we have systems that we use now for water and sewer that we could probably
Mhm.
replicate and use for the trash or something, or maybe even more, maybe we shut it off even sooner or something, you know, we don't believe it's wrong or something, but you could do something like that to make them accountable.
all right,
If it's worked on, if it's done the way it's set up to do, but there's houses in town for enterprise funds that go years without being shut off and that owe thousands of dollars.
No,
Okay.
not anymore, not with the
No,
water
I
and
I
sewer.
can give you an instance on Denison Drive.
so we're
That's
talking
okay.
about bags right now, so let's
Right.
stick to bags, please.
Well, we'll talk about it after because.
So the only question I would just like to wrap this up, and I do have a couple questions that some residents asked me. The trash, the bag system is an incentive program. It's not only an incentive to get people to recycle more, it's also an incentive to save the town money, correct?
Yes, it is.
So you sent me an email saying that the town would save about 500,000 the first year.
The revenue would be about 500,000, the savings would be about 140, 150,000.
So now that's different than what we have been talking about, that the revenue would be 900,000, so you're saying would be closer to 500,000.
So it depends where you set the cost of the bag. So we haven't spoken, so
Right.
I don't know where either of us set the, I know where I set the bag revenue, but we haven't coordinated. So it could be 20 million, but the bags would be crazy expensive. So we made an assumption on the revenue, and I know, I'm sure Irene made an assumption on the revenue as well.
Okay,
So we just made different assumptions.
and you said about, and over 10 years, the town would make about 5 million
That's correct.
on the program.
Or 10 million, depending on where you set the bag price.
So now, what if somebody, like me, I'm like these people, they put out maybe one bag a week. I could probably do that every 2 weeks. Now, would I get an enterprise fee that would be for only half what everybody else is getting, or is it just gonna be one fee?
So what typically happens is you have the ability to put them, you have the ability to access the service every week, therefore you pay the same flat fee,
Right,
right? So you could put a bag out every week if you chose to do so. So if the fee's $240, just picking a number, then everybody pays the $240 because everybody can access the service every week whether you choose to or not. So if you put out a bag every other week, you'd save on your bags, but you wouldn't save on the
Right.
flat fee because you have access to use the service if you need to.
And if it's a windy
Yeah,
night, you
I
can
got
pick
it.
up your neighbors, so you'll have more than a bag.
so it would save me money.
I just did it tonight, so have at it.
And Mr.
Right,
Chairman, if
does
I may-
anybody else have anything? Hold on.
Just a minor point, you referenced the fact that, the town would choose the size of the bags. Are you, does the town restrict it to one size, you choose one size bag, or, okay?
No, so what we
I
find
assume
is,
so.
so we recommend always 2 sizes,
Right.
and some communities, typically cities, offer 3.
Right.
They offer what, I don't name it this, but it's what's called a senior bag, which is like 7 or 8 gallons, a real small bag. So that's typically done in cities, not a lot of towns do it, but we recommend at least 2 sizes of bags, and you can do more if you want.
We were talking about, savings. Let's say it's $50,000. Does that mean the next year your tax rate, I'm sorry, not your tax rate, but the charge that you're going to, put on the taxpayer or the person with 1 or 2 bags, is that gonna decrease then if you're saving $50,000? Are you gonna accumulate that money and just put it into the coffer? Or is the cost gonna go down and the residents are gonna reap the savings?
What we've typically done, to the extent it's helpful, is we build that into the analysis at the beginning. So we have a pretty good sense as to how much you're gonna save, and so the fee is set assuming the savings. So you don't have a surplus money kicking around. I mean, you may end up with surplus money because more people pay the fee than you expected or whatever. But we assume the savings at the front end, so the fee is already set, assuming the savings exists.
Last question, do you charge a fee to provide the bags?
It's the cost of the bags. So all the stuff that we do is in the cost of the bags, which is the same cost of
Is it
bags.
upfront? Do we pay you upfront for the
No.
bags?
No, so
Okay.
you don't pay us if you were to work with us, you don't pay us upfront for anything, even
Okay.
that we
So
can charge a
they buy
plate
the
fee,
bag
but-
and you take a piece of the cost of the bag?
Correct.
All right,
Yep.
thank you.
Or if you wanna pay upfront, instead you can do it that way. It's
Oh,
your choice.
okay, Mark, you say you have one more
Yeah,
question?
one more quick. The cost of the bag, does that go up?
So there's a provision in the contract that, yes, the cost of the bag can go up every year by a certain amount.
Okay.
That's in the agreement.
So every year the cost of the bag can go up, which everything else is going up. Is there a possibility of a bag shortage?
So we've not experienced one. And
Is there a
there's the possibility.
Yeah,
So the possibility mainly exists with so we manufacture the bags in the US.
right, but what I'm saying, my example would be, or analogy would be, this is a small town. If you were gonna have a shortage, you would shortchange us before you would
No.
shortchange Worcester.
So allow me to back up. So where shortages exist, we typically find it so we make it in the US. Where you're importing the bags from China, is where you've got these long supply lines where, and back when everything was getting jammed up on the West Coast with shipments in China, there was risk there,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm getting my bags from China and now they're sitting 3 months out in the port and they're not getting offloaded and shipped east. We manufacture the bags ourselves in the US.
Okay,
So we've not shorted anybody.
okay.
The way our contracts work is we keep a minimum of 2 months of your inventory in inventory. We keep them in 2 separate warehouses in 2 separate risk zones. So if there's a hurricane, a road closure, a fire, whatever, you don't lose all your bags.
Okay,
So we keep them in 2 separate locations. At 2 months of bags left, we'll call the town and say, hey, we think we need to make more bags. It takes us 2 weeks to make bags. And so we get down to like a month and a half left of inventory, and now we're back up to 6, 8, 12 months of inventory.
okay.
So that's something we manage with you. Now, I suppose you could say, don't make any more bags and run yourself out of bags, but what we do in that
So we
instance
could run ourselves out of that.
is, what we'll do at that point is run this ourselves.
Well, okay, because I mean, human error is a great possibility.
800 communities across 40 years, it's not happening.
Right, not, through your business, I understand that. I'm saying as the town making, administrative mistake,
So
we still wouldn't run out.
So the administrative mistake would be really hard to make because we'd be calling that, so we'd be calling every week
Okay.
for the first 2 weeks, then every day
Okay.
after that.
So we have a
And then
base, yeah.
I'm driving out after that and knocking on the door
Okay.
and sitting in front of the town and just calling.
Can we make the bags here in Southbridge?
Sorry, I can't.
Come on, we want you to come here, manufacture them right here.
You got it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to just clarify, is when you have the beginning of a program, you want to put a limit on what people can buy the first time, so you don't just have a run on the bank, you don't. So some people always say like, oh, I'm gonna buy my whole year's supply in one day.
That's not gonna happen.
So it's
Well,
kind of
I
saying
mean, stranger
two
things,
roles
chicken
for
stop
the
laying
beginning.
eggs.
You
So
kind of
don't tell me that they
So I
can't
would
be
say,
sorted.
one question.
every community has someone buys 400, buys a case. So every community we work with, somebody buys 400
All
bags.
right, well, anyways, I'd like to thank you for coming here, and it was a really good presentation.
Yeah, they're required to be made, they're on state contract, these ones are made from recycled material.
They are, yes. Yep. The darker the color, the more recycled content is typically in it. The darker the color, the more recycled content we can put in. Because it's really hard to get pure clear to make clear bags or pure yellow to make yellow bags. But a darker bag, I can put yellow or orange or blue, whatever in there. So the darker has more recycled.
So is this stuff recycled as trash bags?
So not typically. So it's this is linear low density polyethylene. So it's milk. So every milk pallet of milk has to be wrapped with LLVPE. So we take plastics. We take a lot of other manufacturing and some residential plastic.
Irene?
30-gallon drum in the kitchen.
Irene? Irene? Back, please sit down. Thank you.
I'm sorry, she's asking me a question.
One thing I misspoke. It's 1 to 3 families is required, not 4. The communities I've worked in, we set it at 4 to go with the assessor's records,
We're setting
but
it
it's
at
1 to 3.
6. Yeah.
Okay. At the moment, sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
How many different colors
All
do
right.
you have? Makes it easier.
About a dozen. I'd say light and dark.
Okay, we're gonna move on then. Agenda item number 4, review, discuss RFP. Do you have anything new on that tonight?
Sure.
All right.
So we had a pre-proposal meeting on Tuesday. And we had 3 contractors show up.
Great.
The RFP went out to 6 companies. The meeting was very productive. There were a lot of questions. 47 from one vendor. So there'll be an addendum that will be set out for the RFP to answer any questions that have come through, as well as one of the big questions they asked is whether or not we would bump the timeline out a little bit. So we're giving them another week to, compile their proposals and submit them. So now the proposals will be due on the 16th of March.
Okay.
The rest of the timeline has not been adjusted as of this moment. So even though we gave them a little bit more time to produce it, our intention at this point is to get the review and the award done in the same time.
Okay, that would have to be, because if we have to go to ballot, we have a certain deadline for that, so, yeah.
Exactly, I mean, unless there's any specific questions about that.
I don't. Anybody else have any questions?
I was just curious which of the three showed up.
Sure. Waste Management,
Mm.
Casella, and, oh my gosh, I'm blanking.
Republic?
On the third, Republic, thank you,
Oh, okay.
yes.
Did we get any of the smaller people taking out bids? Or getting,
Smaller,
receiving any
such
smaller,
as-
like,
Small
Well,
vendors,
USA
small vendors,
Waste
yeah.
is not that small.
LaBeouf?
We
Or
sent one to
Pratt
LaBeouf,
or
just,
whoever.
they didn't ask for it, but we sent it to them because
Local.
they should have one.
Yeah, I think we should, I mean,
You know?
I would love to see us try to
Um,
prioritize local ones if they can do the job.
Right.
We
Ben
get away from
Harvey,
the big guys and,
so Waste Management, Ben Harvey, Republic, USA Waste, LaBeouf, and Casella, thank you. So those were the six that,
I know
received
that
them.
Waste Management's been very receptive. They came to our last committee,
Mhm.
made a presentation.
Yeah, they asked 47 questions.
They're inquisitive, yes.
Very
Yeah,
inquisitive.
Yeah, yeah.
But good, we like questions, you know? So it was a
Ms.
good
Clemens,
meeting.
you have a question?
Thanks, yeah, in regard to the RFP or how you're doing this, how does that work, like, we're still determining, you're still determining, you know, bag, no bag and all that, so how are you I mean, you know what I'm saying? How is that
There's a
working?
slight change
Are
in
they
scope
giving-
that might have to happen, is what you're saying.
Well, I
How
mean,
can they
are
do
they
that
saying to
scope?
you, hey,
Right.
are we picking up bags or just dumping the trash can? It doesn't matter if there's bags or there's other kinds of, you know, are we keeping track? Do we have, like, is that part of the whole?
No,
So
why
in
would,
order for
why
them-
would they care what color the bag is? I don't
Well,
think-
would they, no, whether they had to know whether they had to monitor a bag. In
Oh,
other
I
words, if
see.
it's a bag, if it's a bag and a bin program,
Yep.
there's some responsibility to that. We
Yep.
just talked about it,
Right.
I know.
Okay.
So if there's if there's bags or trash in a bin, they don't have to, so is that a point for them?
It is,
It costs, you know, like, okay.
and it's in there.
It's,
Like we put in, we developed the RFP based on our current program with some changes.
right,
We put in there that they should be aware that the town is looking at pay-as-you-throw. And we also put in that they needed to have a camera, because it is an automated, collection that we're asking for. That they would need to have a camera, which they would have to anyways, to monitor, you know, the
so I just didn't
bag.
know if that was changing the scope of cost, that's all, like,
But wouldn't the cost come down because there'd be less disposal with a bag
We-
program?
You're done by ton, so.
One of the addendums that you'll see in the RFP will be a provision for taking that into consideration.
Okay,
alright,
all right.
thank you.
What about one of these?
Yeah.
Is
We're
that
working
what
on
these are
that.
from?
We are working
Can
on
we use the
that.
grant money for that?
I don't know yet. That's something that Dave Adams.
Get 130,000 if we get the bags, right?
Anybody else? Have
You can
any-
use the money for bags.
No, he's asking.
Can we use the money to start a transfer station? It's grant money, it's for trash. The transfer station is trash.
We
can
have a
use
separate thing to
CBD.
start that, but I think you've already got that we are having a curbside program to
No, I'm
start
saying-
with. Yes, there is money to.
There's $130,000 associated with if we do pay-as-you-throw, right?
That is then for the implementation of your curbside
It's
program.
earmarked for a curbside program.
So I think having a monitor be on there for a week would be
We are
beautiful.
looking at that. All right, if nothing else, we're gonna move on. Thank you, Anna.
Sure.
Review, discuss survey results. You have any updates on the survey?
Yes, I do. We just compiled the data today, so I can go over the results.
Sure, go ahead.
As we broke it down, the options, the affiliations, and where do you get your town information from? Okay, and I'll start with the options, which are taxes, A.
Excuse. You can't stand up tonight at all.
Okay, sure.
Right.
All right.
Very important. Oh, thank you.
Since I'm-
Well, if people listen instead of talking, that'd be nice too.
Yes.
So the survey results were just compiled today from our team. We got the data. We take it from the survey that's been submitted with the census, and we put it in an Excel form. And, it takes a little bit of time, but we are getting a lot of results and a lot of surveys. So with that said, I'll read you again the results of what we've been receiving. It's broken down into options, which entails A, taxes, B, the flat fee, and C, the user fee. The other category is affiliation. We have owner, landlord, and renter. And we also have, where do you get your town information from? Okay. Town council meetings, mail, website, newspaper, social media, coffee shops, senior center, and other. Okay? So, let me break it down. And we also have a comment note section. And if everybody would like to hear some of the comments, good, bad, or ugly, I can share that. But they are coming in with a lot of comments, especially this batch. So, anyhow, I will start with the options, which everybody wants to hear about, okay? And again, taxes, flat fee, and user fee. A, we had 407 for the taxes. B, flat fee 413, user fee 644. Okay. Affiliation, owner 1,054, landlord 83 respondents, renter 308. Now the survey, the last category here, where do you get your town information from? TC meetings, town council meetings, 219. Mail, 745. Website, 437. Newspaper, 303. Social media, 465. Coffee shop, 68. Senior center, 35, and other, 178. But what Steve had come into our office and made a good point, and we wanted to filter through some of the results and break it down with the options A, B, and C. Broke that down as with owners and renters. So option A, which is the taxes, owners 253, renters 98. Option B, the flat fee, 246 owners, 88 renters. Option C, the user fee, 457 owners and renters 73. So that gives you an idea, and I will read some of the newest comments. And I'll tell you, just as I read the results before, the commonality is really three things, what most people address. One, need more information. Secondly, need more information pertaining to costs. And third, taxes. Those are the three to make an informed decision. Okay. And many are here. Costs, need further information, but I'll read you some of the other ones. Property tax is already insane for Southbridge. However, I can only imagine how much trash will be around back roads if you leave it up to the tenants to pay. We paid already too many taxes. Another one's renegotiate with Casella. None of the above. Where did all the Casella money go? I am under the impression that my property tax already pays for trash removal. I am seriously concerned that any of these options will be beyond my budget. And one that is emphatically, this is BS. And that's short, obviously, but again, yes. you know, everything from who will count the trash bags, I would like to know the fee per bags, depends on price. And we shouldn't have to pay for trash, life costs are already expensive.
So that is the common theme, that we don't, but
That
we
is the common theme.
don't, we don't know the cost. At this
That's right.
point, we don't know the cost.
Maybe that's something to add on.
No, there's nothing to do until we have a solid number.
Go
I mean,
ahead,
rather
Roger.
than that,
Well,
we're
and I was
guessing.
gonna say that public education is the next thing, is to put it on social media and on the website. We have a date, the RFP has been released, 6 haulers have said we should get a date by March 16th. I mean, I just think that's,
Well, we won't have a decision on
we
that.
won't have a decision, it's coming in, it'll be a couple weeks after that.
If you put a date, the poor guy on the Board of Health's phone's gonna be ringing off the hook.
It already
And
is.
yours.
All
It
right,
already is.
But I just think that they know, I mean, we're trying to keep everybody in the loop, so if they know that the RFP just went out, we don't have a number, we have a theory number of what other communities have been paying and what the rates are about, but you don't have a number until.
well, what's aggravating about it is that we've known about this for a year, and nobody took the time to put anything together on this, so.
I had one comment on that.
Go ahead.
It was interesting to me when, and I thank your staff for breaking down the information for owners versus renters.
That was
There's a clear theme there that owners are least in favor of the tax option
well,
and most in favor of the bag option
Yeah.
for certain reasons,
It's pretty
especially if you're
close.
landlords.
not as much.
But the renters feel exactly the same way. They want it on the taxes, that way it's not their problem.
Yep.
And they would rather least likely to be buying bags. It's not a huge disparity, but especially on the renter side, it's very close. But the owner side, the owners are clearly saying that they favor bags.
That's true.
So
That's
if you
where
do
the
a
patches
fee with
come
the
from.
bags.
I would do a fee with a bag, but it's
In
what I
order
would
to make
favor
it
of.
accountable and ownership, and then you still gotta, I mean, potentially.
Seems fair to me, because like I said, I put out one bag, somebody's putting out,
Right.
Right.
So your fee would be
overflowing
lower
bags.
overall,
Yeah.
your quarterly
Oh, yeah,
fee would be
mine too.
lower, and then depending on what the
Yeah,
tax
yeah.
is.
all right, is that it?
That was just an
So you
observation.
should work your numbers on that idea.
Yep,
Work
well,
your numbers on that.
we are working on that. Steve is
Well, you
working on
finally
it.
got numbers, Steve, so thank you for having numbers
I got a
last month.
question.
Go ahead, Dan.
I asked it a year ago.
That email that we got, remember when Andrew Pelletier, he projected the cost till 2024, how accurate is that?
He
Not
said it was pretty accurate.
So
He thought it was pretty accurate.
can we like maybe base some of the cost on those numbers?
Well, I did send
what I
that
did.
out to everyone. You all got that, right?
Yeah, I got that email,
Alright,
but
okay.
I mean,
But I don't
it
think
seemed like he figured it out right to the,
He said it was
for the
pretty
projection
accurate.
of 2024.
But we need it for the current, you know,
Right.
we
Right,
have to
but
have,
still,
that- there's
that
so
should
that's
give
what
us-
I've given you last time, I gave you that whole spreadsheet,
Right.
and that's still on those numbers.
Right.
If we go over that, we're just
Because we
doing it
can
again.
pretty much make a projection based on those numbers anyway, right?
Um,
It's not,
Yep.
our
But if
problem
we-
is how to figure how to pay for it.
But if we do that, we're just gonna go over it again. I mean,
Well,
the-
we've
from
gone
when
over
he
5
did,
times at
from when
least.
he did it to now, diesel alone has gone up in a truck unless they have a electric garbage truck, and I haven't heard
Right,
that
but
come
those
out
numbers are
yet.
projected till
Yeah,
2024,
two
so they gotta
companies,
be
Republic and
somewhat
Casella,
accurate.
both now have
I mean, they're not gonna be
electric
exact
vehicles.
numbers,
I
but they gotta be
don't know
somewhat
if they're-
close to being
It
accurate.
must be close.
Where they're
enough
using
to
Because
get
these
you-
guys, you know,
They
every
are
building
testing
put
it
a lot
and
of time
using
into it.
have bottom.
I agree.
Feels like we've shifted
You know what I
to
mean?
number 6 already.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't
That's
think
good.
that we waste time
Cut
All right.
our meetings out.
without a number.
Well, that's why
So
we're
we,
waiting for the number.
we will
Well, I
move
agree.
on then to number 6, review, discuss funding mechanisms. Go ahead, Irene.
Well, I think we've been there. The biggest thing is, I think it's already saying, flat fee, we need a flat fee and we like the bags. That makes it fair for everybody. The flat fee though depends on, can we get, the billing process done? Can we, you guys are having that discussion, can we just have, maybe do a test of just trash? I know you're trying to say, move all the water and sewer and everything
Yeah, I
into
guess
a new
there's
system.
I guess there's a problem with the version that we're in of Munis that it won't. I wasn't at Gen Gov, but I just heard that Munis has a problem with additional.
We had one discussion about that
So can there just be an added on?
Tell me if this is
It
correct.
might be possible, but from what Francine was saying, but the issue is intercommunication between the two programs, between Munis and their Tyler cashiering programs. They're not communicating with each other properly. They're trying to solve the problem between the assessor's office and the accountant's office. And it's an issue of the fact that they're basically two different years programs. And it really has nothing to do with this per se, as much as it is Munis basically upgraded without taking into consideration what we actually do here. Surprise,
Can we just
surprise.
have our own system? Like, can it just be, instead of the water and sewer, can at least for a short period of time, let's go out with a better
It's
company?
about 40 grand a year for, if we run like a Muni Link or something, we do billing just for
Something like
trash.
We could, from what Francine was saying, there are variants of the Munis program that allow you to do that kind of billing. She was mentioning that, for example, Holden bills for all kinds of utilities, including
Right.
trash. And several other communities do that. And the issue is simply having the right programming to do it. And having people trained to properly use it.
Well, that's why one of the
That's the
things
key.
was maybe for this system, for the beginnings of it, is it be outsourced? And what would that be, and has that been in discussion?
We've talked a little bit about that, we don't have numbers on that.
So just
Is there a way to get that number? I mean, I just think we
Well, I
need
know,
that
I
number
know.
as soon as possible, and I
know.
think us waiting for the town to have an official
I think that
billing
needs-
system for all utilities is gonna be longer
I think
than
that
we
needs to
need.
go to the top of the interim town manager's list.
Well, he's also doing the budget right now.
No, I understand.
That's gonna be the top
Trust me,
priority.
I'm in budgets too.
So
But
you
he's-
just
he's
tell me
aware
what
that
you
this is an
think.
issue.
Tell me what you think of this. I put this together based on your numbers.
Yeah,
When I did the minutes and I listened to you and I looked at the numbers that you provided, so I put this together. The only thing that I added was the municipal buildings, because when Dave Adams
yeah,
ran the curbside committee, that was the number that Andy Pelletier provided, 70,000 for municipal buildings.
okay, I
So
did not
I
have
added
that.
that in. So I just made this up. I was a little confused about your numbers on costs per resident. Is it 319 for property owner, property taxes per property owner? Is
Because
it-
the taxes are different, so I think we wanna, because of the numbers, we don't even wanna look at taxes. I think everybody here is
Okay.
kinda,
Well,
unless you have the little part of it.
we don't know that yet till we vote, but then flat fee only per household, that's $300. How does that become less than property taxes? I was a little confused by that. And then user fee, 1.5 bags per week per household, 156 per year. Is that on top of the $300
Yeah.
flat fee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the whole program would be $300.
So
So
100
either, that's the pie. The pie is, if you come down to $300 is the pie. So if you do just a flat fee, it would be $300 per unit. And then every unit, if you have a 2
But
unit,
if you did
600 if you have.
bags, that would lower
If
it?
you, yes, that's where you have, if you use the, bags, under this, we still get better numbers, we get better rates, so I was using the kind of like the $2 million, be like $150 a flat fee, and then $156 for the bags.
Okay.
But that 156, it ranges that's the average,
That's why we
but
have
you're
to
only
wait
using a bag.
We do have to wait.
You're using a bag every other week. Another person, you have a family, you have other people in the house, you're using 4 bags a week. So that rate is on an average, it would be 156, but that could be more. And you go away and
It
things
depends how much of the cost we'll cover in the flat fee and how expensive do we want the bag.
right.
Right.
You know, like my rough math here, if we want the bags to be 25% of the cost, let's just say, then it'd be $1.50 a bag. If they use 1 bag per week, which was, they said was the average, that would be 327,600 bags per year for the town. That raise $500,000. Take the remaining $1.5 million, divide it up by 6,300 units, it's $238 per unit per year.
And then next year, the price of the bag goes up. So
And-
the cost of the
But
bag goes
your-
up.
I know we
But
keep
your
on saying that,
program
but Worcester
included-
has not, it's taken a, I know
We're
you
not-
had one
we're not
town.
Worcester.
I know you're not Worcester. Most of my towns, I have 75 communities, there's 155 communities that have this program. My thing is, we do need to up it every 2 years. You should add a quarter on, you should add thing on it. I have the city of West Boylston, that has not changed at all, and they're still at 75 cents. It's like, you gotta get higher than 75 cents. It's time to move up to $1 a bag, you know.
Okay.
wondering about the disposal cost, like, where did that number come from?
From her,
So the disposal cost is a 20% reduction. So you would take that, and I have it by,
I went down below, disposal cost, 292, 330 is what I wrote. Did I not write it the same here? I might have not.
So that's with a pay-as-you-throw program?
That's a good question. That's where I was getting confused with her
yeah, it's
number.
no, you have no reduction. If disposal cost I have at 292. 292 is with a 20% reduction.
All right.
I'm just curious about that number, Irene, because if we're bringing in about over 5,000 ton a year at $100 a ton,
We're almost there.
that to me is $500,000.
And it depends on the numbers that you get. I think I rotated this, and that's like we're always gonna keep on going this. I was using $80 per ton. So if it's gonna be $100 per ton, that goes up.
Yeah,
More, but
we're erring towards the.
I'm just basing it on
Yep.
$2 million. We're gonna raise
Yep, the
1.8
whole
to
thing
$2
comes
million.
up to $2 million.
That's what we gotta raise,
So that's what.
you know?
And according to your plan here, it's pretty close. It's offsetting the cost, the revenue, and the cost.
So I think that you just have to put ors in here. So if you're doing this is 319 or 300 or 156 and 150. So
Which
that
is 256, right?
So
yes,
either
no,
way you
that's
slice
300.
it,
It's still 300,
yeah,
306.
which is still $200 less than what it would be if you went out for private subscription.
Yeah, well,
Right,
That's not three.
right.
it's still cheaper than, I know that, Charlie told me he's paying.
No, together. So
It's
you
paying
have to
over
add the
$700.
50. I put it. It's
So where's the other?
the flat fee. A flat fee with pay as you throw would be like 150. So it's all being 319, 300, or 306.
So it's around the $300 range.
Yes.
Yeah.
Either way you wanna look at it.
Any way you slice it up, it's gonna,
It's gonna
But
be
like I
around
said,
300.
we'll hear the number when we get it on.
Yeah.
Open the bids on the 16th.
Okay.
And so it's nice for education wise though. I think just keep on getting the word out through the social media and on website that we're just, we've been hearing you want more information. The RFP just got out. We're just gonna get them and open them on the 16th. We're not public, they're not gonna,
So
you can give a date.
isn't gonna be very helpful.
I thought you said that I thought according to
April
you,
4th will be the award day.
right,
Award date.
April 4th is
April 4th is the opening day?
No,
Award day.
award
Okay,
day.
so once they're open, it's public knowledge, we can have that data.
I'd have to check on
No, that is,
that. It is, okay.
by law, yeah.
Take your word on it.
alright,
I open stuff all the time.
Ms. Clemens?
Thanks. So Francine Farland did a great job on getting data for us. I just mentioned in that last email, she had mentioned she found the city of Gardner was using Munis for their trash collection. She went through the whole thing with us, told us what version and all. I think the process, and I realize whether the Newtown interim is busy or not, if you don't have something in place, this will not move forward
Right.
to collect money. So it would seem like the assessor's office or somebody needs direction to somebody, not us, or you not have to tell them to move forward to at least find out, does our system spend the time, the money, whatever it is, our system, can they have that upgrade, can it be done? But definitely it has to come from Mr. Town Manager Blanchard.
Yeah.
And I would just suggest that be the direction from this meeting, is that somebody is moving forward, as you talked about, with that billing program, one way or the other. If Munis can do it, if we can do it, then, and what the cost, they need to find out the cost of that. The town, somebody has to incur that, I gather, the trash program will at some point, but,
What town department is responsible for managing Munis? Is it the manager's office? Is it IT?
It's a little of both.
right,
Because
but
they would be
permission
the
to
one that would-
spend money and give direction to the department head, would be the assessors,
I
like
guess
somebody.
I thought it was Karen.
Right, finance is right,
Right,
so,
so I guess my question on that would be, that would be the department that would go solicit a quote from Munis for the upgrade.
right, there's quotes and stuff for
Yeah,
that, but I'm
right.
saying you still need direction from somebody who's in charge of the money and all, to say, we need to move forward with this,
Yeah.
because usually one department's not gonna just
Right.
go and do
Unilaterally.
So
do
can
it.
that be something that you bring up at the council meeting to say this needs to be done? Because that,
Yeah, it needs,
We have
I think
talked
that
about
everybody is saying that that's kind of the direction we're going to.
Okay.
Ask the
Yeah, you
TM,
got it.
bring it to
You
him
bring it
first.
to
and
Jim.
see
Right,
what
absolutely, we'll sit down and
put
talk
down and-
to Charlie.
We'll put it on.
Okay, and then we're meeting next Wednesday.
You want, we are?
Oh, I know, at the,
Senior
senior
center.
center.
Senior center.
So that's the
At
next
10
thing
o'clock,
is
right?
education, 10 a.m.
Yep.
And you're gonna be the lead there, I'm just gonna be able to share. I think it's good to have the bags to share.
Yeah, good idea, bring them with us.
Mhm.
And one more
I
thing,
have
you're doing
one with me,
education,
I'll
do you
just
wanna
leave
do
it
an
there.
SVP meeting, Mr. Chair? Because they'll have one in March, and they can promote it to anybody, you know, to all their members, plus those who, any community owner could come to that meeting. You know, I
Okay.
mean, any property owner, the way we build it, the way I talked about it for you at the last meeting, was, this is very important to property owners, every
Absolutely.
property owner should be aware of what's going on, so,
Send me an invite.
all right,
Mhm.
well, and then you'll be on for it, so.
Okay.
Do we have a date for that already?
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking right now.
I'm also planning on meeting with the Latino group at the, I don't know when they're going to meet, Tuesdays and Thursdays.
They're there Tuesdays and Thursdays. I reach out to Severina.
Alright,
I mean, you can reach out to Pat,
yeah, alright,
but she might be able to, Severina might be able to get more of them to come in.
okay,
Depends on the day, on how many we have. I think, I don't even know how many if I
alright. Everybody, you gave all the bags away?
They were right when we pulled them.
I don't think
We would have, sorry, I normally have a bunch. I'm really surprised he didn't come back in with more.
Like Planet Fitness bags.
I'll email him, tell him what's about that.
The other thing is, he didn't give you a cost. I think if you wanna ask for him what the cost is.
I thought
March 22nd.
They got that.
I thought we asked him the cost. We didn't ask him the cost?
We asked him the cost of enforcement, and he said that would just be that would be free.
Alright,
So that was very nice to know, because I've actually never had a community do that, that he would take from the driver to Waste Zero. I didn't really knew that they would provide that type of service, and if they provided it, I thought the price would go up.
Well, I thought he said for sending of the letters, but as far as somebody on the ground,
That's a different price. He'd get back to us on the price on the ground, but then it's just the cost of the bag. Like the
Yeah,
whole program's the
I've
cost of the bag. So
Right.
there are two different bags:
Yeah.
the 15-gallon, 20-gallon, and the 33-gallon. 25 cents, 50 cents. You know, he's doing all the inventory and everything. 55 cents. So I want to know. It does depend on how many bags, but
I will
they
send
know.
him an email.
Yeah, because I don't think he wanted to share publicly. So
Oh,
somehow.
okay, alright, agenda item number 7, do you have anything else you wanna add tonight?
I just think if just keep on sharing on social media about that the bid went out and have a date, and I think maybe just to say that April 4th we will have an official number.
Okay,
You know, that's at least safe. You know.
that number is, it's got a little play in it, so, I don't know, I'll have to check with the town manager's office.
Yeah.
you
before I
have a question
release
back there?
I do, to the lady with the
Yeah.
glasses. Yeah, sorry, I don't know your name.
I'm Irene.
Irene, hi. You said a meeting on Wednesday of next week at the senior center?
Yes.
Can I ask you again what day and what time?
So 10 a.m. This coming Wednesday, the 15th. We said
March 15th.
March 15th.
It's coffee and conversation,
That's 2 weeks,
and they'll be there.
March 15th.
I'll talk to you.
2 weeks. No.
Is
So
it-
I'm already.
Second.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Oh yeah, it's 2 weeks. Yep.
The
In
15th.
Good. Yeah. 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah, it's 2 weeks, the
No, that's the
15th.
senior center meeting.
Right, that's next week.
No, 2 weeks.
We're just on the. We're on the 2nd. I keep on thinking. Yeah. I keep on thinking I'm on the 9th.
Don't rush it.
Yeah.
Don't rush it, Irene.
Alright,
I'm getting old as it is.
okay, next meeting. Anybody have an
So
idea?
on the 16th is the RFP date opening. If we come that night, we can see the preliminary numbers. Does
Okay, March 16th,
that work for everybody?
works for me.
It's a Thursday, of course, right? At 6?
March 16th, 6 PM, right here.
Sounds good, good one, Steve, that's good.
You know, we gotta get this stuff.
I know we do. Alright, next meeting date, March 16th, 6 PM. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor? Thank you. We are adjourned.